Band-Aids are one of the simplest yet most brilliant inventions of all time. Just a small piece of cloth protecting our precious skin from infection. But sometimes Band-Aids aren't a solution. Instead, they're part of a problem.
One thing that Band-Aids are good at doing is showing you how racism doesn't necessarily need to be overt, right? A lot of times when people think about racism, they think of ugly, hatred, yelling, slurs, all that kind of stuff. But you also have this institutional racism, you have the systematic kind of racism, systemic racism as well. It's a perfect example for these Band-Aids right here. And these Band-Aids, you might not even have the intention of designing them with a certain skin color in mind, but in designing a Band-Aid, you get outcomes that are biased and most adaptable to you, most amenable to you. And often that doesn't extend to other people who don't necessarily need the same things you need or might need things that you don't need. There's a million more examples when it comes to for photography, for example, when it comes to, I can name 1,000 things.
I remember just like generally throughout my life, like during summertime when people want to like put on like sunscreen. And it's like, I think a lot of times like people like we do joke about like the fact that like Black people can't get skin cancer, which of course is like, yeah, like melanin generally does protect you from like higher rates of like sunburns. But I think like there is like a more of like an underlying effect where it's like, there are actually probably like medical professionals who really don't see Black people as like being like an important group to make aware about skin cancer. And then if you actually look at incidence of skin cancer, Black people tend to have like higher rates of like more deadly forms of skin cancer because of course, you know, the sunscreen brands are not like, part of the reason why I like hate putting on sunscreen is because like it makes my skin like look awful.
There are certain gems of knowledge and backstory that people only have access to if they've lived those experiences before.
I guess if we're just talking about like systemic racism and like institutionalized racism, the first thing I really think about is like the educational system that I was grown up in. I think for me, race and like class and like immigration status is very like intertwined with each other. So the first thing I think of is the fact that my parents immigrated to the US and I was put into the school as like an elementary school student. And then we sort of had this sort of like gifted program. My parents like worked really hard for me to actually get into this gifted program. And the interesting thing about this gifted program is that fact that the school can only put it into certain types of schools because they saw it as a way of like accelerating growth. And my school didn't have this gifted program, but the schools that did have them tended to be a lot more white, tended to not have people who looked like me in them. So when I got into this gifted program, I was put into these schools, a different school away from all my friends from my neighborhood. And like from there, I would notice the fact that like none of the people looked like me and I had to like change the way that I acted so I could fit in with all the people who were at my new school. And whenever like the place that I was from was referenced, it tended to not be referenced in a good way. Even though I found that like I grew up there, I knew that it was obviously safe. But when other people talked about it, it was considered like the ghetto. It was considered the fact like people thought I would get shot up if they went inside of there. And I kind of had to like fit this mold of like the person who is smart, who's talented, because if I'm not that person, I'm the person who comes from these areas.
Often it's very easy to overlook experiences that you don't necessarily have in your own life. When you're building something, your own pains, your own experiences are often like very like front and center. So you build leading with those. But in order to not then introduce what really is systemic or systematic racism, you need to expand your viewpoint to maybe other people's lives and other people's harms as well. Because when you design something that's primarily for you, you can often design something that's not for other people.
A big thing that has been on my mind lately since like I'm going to medical school has sort of been like also like the idea of like the like Black infant mortality rate and like Black just like the Black women like for mortality rate in like hospitals like in the US where like doctors are like going to like ignore like Black women when they ask for like drugs or when they say something is wrong because they either think they like have like high drug tolerances. And it's actually like a thing that dates back to like slavery, where like they assume that like Black people are just stronger and so are able to like take more pain. And it's like crazy where it's like, of course, like slavery has not existed, at least the US, since like the 1860s. And of course, like segregation is no longer like the law of like the land, but it's like these things like still manifest like 200 years later, where it's like people will actually be like, oh yeah, you know, like they don't need as much pain medication because they can like tolerate pain more.
There's certain things that are almost like quintessentially Black. And there are certain things that are special to me and to us because they stem from experiences that we share, right? And this hair pick is more of a thing of necessity because our hair is a certain kind of way. Maybe you want to pick it out, you want to help loosen it. But there are other examples of things that Black people might have lived through rather than tools, things that they may have lived through that stand out to them and that can bind their experiences together. I think people have to realize there's something special in each and every single person's lived experience, not even as a race, but just each and every single person's lived experience. And memorializing that and investigating and caring about that and holding space for those things is important. And that's ultimately how you address these larger issues of marginalization. That's ultimately how you make Band-Aids that are maybe not brown, but maybe just clear, right? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of different stories to tell, and you can't tell all of them, but you can hold space for all of them. You can care about all of them.